Hello everyone, I'm Justice Graves and I'm currently running to be a member of the school committee for the Narragansett Regional School District here in Templeton, Massachusetts, and today this video is going to again be under the topic of racial and sex stereotyping and scapegoating in compelled speech here on my campaign channel. Again, videos underneath this topic are meant for parents, administrators, and other concerned members of the community or other concerned organizations. These are not necessarily meant for children under the age of 18 or under the age of majority, so please be aware of that. I will not be swearing or saying anything wildly inappropriate in these videos, but please just be aware this topic and the level of this topic may be very concerning and distressing for minors. And it is more important that administrators and parents understand this versus a child, because we shouldn't be putting the weight on children to fix things, although that should go without being said. I guess I just said the thing you're not supposed to say, at least in terms of that. So anyway, we are just going to jump right into it. So today's video is going to be me reading an article. That article is going to be linked in the description. It is from The Atlantic. It has been out for a little bit of time now. It was released on April 3rd. This is about a woman whose name I will probably completely mess up, so I'm going to just not try and say it as often as I can. This woman is from Evanston, Illinois. She is a black parent, and she is a school board candidate who is running because she is concerned that this new curriculum in the school district that her children are learning is disempowering them. And what she's worried about is that it will disempower other black children, and what she's worried about is that it actually prevents real conversations, not just conversations, but discussions, action-based discussions about what we can actually do to help the black community that just aren't addressed by critical race theory. Because again, critical race theory is modern white supremacy. So what would a critical race theorist, no matter what race, color, or creed they are, why would they care about actually helping people? And this is what we are going to address. I'm going to show it on the screen as I read through it. I'm going to switch into that now. And we are going to just get ahead. This is the title of it. The narrative is, You Can't Get Ahead. In Evanston, Illinois, a black parent and school board candidate takes on a curriculum meant to combat racism. Again, this is going to be in the description of this video. Nadana M. wants to improve the election that public school children, including her son and daughter, receive in Evanston, where her mother's family history goes back 5 generations. This woman has lived here her whole life. She only moved out recently to be in, Canada, and then she moved back to the United States. And she'll talk about that. As a candidate for the school board in District 65, which educates children up until 8th grade, she wants to close the academic achievement gap, separating black and brown students from white ones, help children who need special education, and address what she sees as a lack of support for students whose first language isn't English. And I'm going to explain that there is actually an issue going on in linguistics about this, because another fun fact about me, had I not gone to UMass Lowell, I would have went to I did try to apply to MIT, did not get in, but I tried. I went for the interview, I did all that stuff, and I was not the first wave of people that got excluded. I was with the normal students. Some people I knew who applied got immediately rejected. I got to wait until Pi Day to find that out, which was rather interesting. And had I gone, I would have learned, I would have chosen electrical engineering and linguistics. Practical linguistics, not theoretical. I would have had to choose a concentration because linguistics is a field, I believe, within certain schools of philosophy. At least on the fringes of that, before it goes into its practical standpoints. So again, I just wanted to mention that, and why I understand why what I just highlighted, is extremely important, because we're seeing a debate right now in linguistics on this. So let's just go back to the article. That agenda would be ultra-progressive in many communities, and it would be. But in Evanston, however, M is challenging not the right, but the left. Progressives don't want what she's selling. They don't want to help the achievement gap. They don't want to help students with special education, which is concerning and actually disgusting. and they don't want to help they don't want to help English language learners. Like, they are against what she's saying. This is progressives. This is Illinois. This is the state of Illinois. This is what this has done to these people. In a recent article on Black Lives Matter, at the school curriculum in Evanston, I quoted Evanston parents who favor diversity, racial equality, and inclusiveness, but object to lessons that they believe cross the line into indoctrination, white supremacy indoctrination. All the parents I interviewed would be quoted only anonymously out of fear that they would be harassed online or even lose their job. White supremacy is bullying. So again, why are we surprised that this is popping up? You seeing all the connections now in this article, everything that I've talked about? I've led you up to this. If you haven't seen the other videos, read the other video. Listen to the other videos first, all the way through. M, 44, a member of the NAACP Evanston North Shore branch and the Colognes community of Chicago, share their concerns about the curriculum and is now among the most outspoken critics. She attributes her willingness to talk openly to the fact that she is self-employed. A business consultant and translator, good for her. M, being a translator is not easy. M attended public schools in Evanston as a child and then moved away. So she has a baseline for what the school system used to be like. When she returned with her children of her own in 2018, she anticipated that they would receive the empowering, racially inclusive education she remembered. Instead, she was confronted with a curriculum she deems disempowering, divisive, and ill-suited to help the needs of students to help students of color succeed in school. I want to point this out. I spoke with Em on Tuesday. The transcript of our conversation has been condensed and edited for clarity. The interviewer: how has Evanston changed? M: I grew up in the 5th Ward, a predominantly black neighborhood. My mom is African American and very Afrocentric. We had black dolls, we had books about Africa, we had all this imagery that was positive reinforcement for who we were. We did have white friends, but to be honest, our life didn't revolve around white people, which is what white supremacists want it to be about. We have a kind of cushion of black comfort, so to speak, where we were allowed to be children, and whatever prejudices might have existed, we weren't aware of them. Children are inherently innocent and love themselves. I'd like to point that out. That is very true of all children. Unless you teach them to hate themselves. If you teach a child very early on to hate themselves between the ages of about, I believe, 5 and 8, it's very hard to break that habit. I actually still have habits, most people won't admit it. I'm young enough that I remember when I was 5 and 8. I have a very good memory anyway. Anyone will tell you that. But I'm young enough to remember when I was 5 and 8. Some of the weird habits that I have, or some of the weird mental things that go on in my head, I still experience as a 22-year-old. And it's hard to break those things. I've broken some of those things as I've gotten older, some of my weird bad habits, some of my weird habits that weren't good, not bad. But if you're teaching young children in elementary school, and her kids are in elementary school, by the way, and this will come up later in this article, when you teach children to hate themselves between the ages of 5 and 8, especially if they're black, it's not good. And if you're teaching students who are white that they are bad inherently, they're going to be bad people. They're going to think, oh, I can't get ahead. So then they'll go into the bully victim cycle. This is all understandable stuff, and a lot of psychologists know this. But I don't know why there aren't more psychologists speaking about this. I'm not even a psychologist, and I understand that this is a problem. This is really a psychology problem. A really big child psychology problem. So I had a very good childhood. Let's go back to the article. So I had a very good childhood. One teacher, who was not white, thought in 1st grade that I needed to be in special education because I was active and talked a lot. In 3rd grade, my teacher couldn't pronounce my name. But those are the only issues I remember. Everyone screws up my name. So she's not, and I'm clearly just trying not to screw up her name, so we're all in the same boat. But those are the only issues I remember. Evanston to me was almost a utopia. This is why I told my children while we were living outside Toronto, when we move back to the States, let's move to Evanston. I gave my children and my husband, who grew up in the Democratic Republic of Congo, this idea that it would be a place for both black unity and people working together across color lines. But when we got here in 2018, within the first year, my children were being taught that about white supremacy and white privilege, and that all white people were rich and racist. My son and daughter came home like, what is this? The interviewer: What was the problem with those lessons, beyond your children not liking them? M. My children have always been so proud of who they are. Then, all of a sudden, they started to question themselves because of what they were taught after arriving here. My son has wanted to be a lawyer since he was 11. Then one day he came home and told me, "But Mommy, there are these systems put in place that prevent black people from accomplishing anything, That's what they're teaching black kids. That all of this time for the past 400 years, that this is what white people have done to you and your people. The narrative is you can't get ahead," which is the title of the article. Of course I want my children to know about slavery and Jim Crow. We all want children to understand that this is bad. But I want it to be balanced out with the rest of the truth, which is what I've been talking about, which is the rest of the truth. They're not taught about black people who accomplished things in spite of white supremacy, or about the black people today who got ahead, built things, achieved things, and those who had opportunities that their ancestors fought for. For example, like this woman running for school board who has her own business. The interviewer: tell me more about the narrative you want to challenge. M. One day my daughter told me that she was taught that all white people are privileged and part of a system of white supremacy. My son said the same thing. So I reached out to my daughter's teacher to find out exactly what she was being taught. It was pretty much like she said, that all white people were part of the system of white supremacy, and that all white people, because of the color of their skin, had privilege. I said, "But that's not true." And the teacher said, "But what do you mean?" I want to remind you that this woman is black, and that her husband is from the from the Republic, they're not from this country, and her children are not born from this country. So I'd just like to point that out. And then M continues, "I've traveled a lot. My father was a university professor and taught in both the United States and Paris. And when I visited, I saw white people in public housing. I've been to Belgium and Switzerland and seen very poor white people. I visited other parts of Europe. I've lived in Canada for 10 years. There are poor white people in Canada as well. I'm not saying systemic racism doesn't exist, but class exists too." This is really important. Remember what I talked about in the last video. They talk about how race is the only issue. There's issues of class, and there's issues with the economy that exist in the world. So I just want to throw that out there. This is a little bit closer to the truth right here. And I don't believe that all white people have privilege. The white person who's living in the Appalachian Mountains, by the way, if you don't understand what this references to one of the area around the Appalachian Mountains, or in the Appalachian Mountains in the United States. They have some of the highest, and I mean highest, rates of drug abuse, and these are the areas of the United States that are really where some of the mining community is. So if you don't know anything about Appalachia in America, you should. There's some good documentaries about it. Who has no means or prospect of changing their situation. They really can't. It's bad out there. We talk about issues in Massachusetts, but Appalachia's not a good place. I would not live there. I would actively try not to live there, and I don't intend on moving there. Do they too have privilege compared to me and my kids? She could move. These people often can't. I would just like to throw this out there. I spent a lot of time in Central Africa because my dad is from the Congo, and some of the propaganda that's being spread right now here in Evanston is similar to the divisions that took place in Rwanda before the massacre. I'm not saying that that's what's going on here, but when you start labeling people in a negative manner based on their race or ethnic group, this leads to division and destruction, not finding common ground and positive solutions. Again, I've already said all of this. The interviewer: not all white people are racist, but some are. How should schools handle that? And this is actually a good question. M: I'm aware that there are parents who are extremely negative and teach negative things to their children. And if a child does have a thought that is negative, you correct them, but in a positive manner. You don't tell the child of a white supremacist to hate themselves. That's not going to fix it. And that actually, in every single documented case, including the case where David Duke's own grandson is now out of the KKK, he was taught how to leave by positive reinforcement. Not by hating himself and hating other groups. Positive reinforcement. It's very important. You don't have to correct them by browbeating everyone and making them ashamed of who they are and telling them that because of how they look, they are innately bad. Who tells children to do that? That's just evil. Telling children this, to be ashamed of themselves, this is abuse. If I were white, which I don't want to be because I love the skin that I'm in, this is self-confidence. She was clearly taught self-confidence. I'd be angry if I learned my child was being labeled as a racist or white supremacist, or the fruit of white supremacy, which is what they call all white children. The white supremacists actually call all white children the fruit of white supremacy. This is very telling of what their intentions are, because their intentions are to turn them into vehicles to push their agenda. This is all obvious. The interviewer. Does it rankle you as a black person when people define white culture with positive stereotypes, such as showing up to places on time? Again, and I tie everything together very nicely. This does come up. M. That's exactly how I feel. The education system tends to erase or mute black people from having different backgrounds and experiences. No, really. White supremacists treat black people like the black community is a monolith. This is the truth. We know this. I don't know why we're letting this in the classrooms. We'll go back. They make this assumption that all black people are a monolith. Oh, I already jumped ahead. They all speak the same way, think the same way, and conduct themselves in the same way. Any black or white person who believes this, anybody of any race, color, or creed, Asian, Hispanic, anyone who believes that every single person everybody who looks the same in the same group, no matter if it's an ethnic, racial, or national, even if it's within nationalities, this is like wicked prejudice. Wicked. Monoliths are not cool, man. They really aren't. They're boring. Showing up for time has nothing to do with being white. It doesn't. It's something that you're taught or not taught. My father taught me at a very early age to keep my word. If you're going to go somewhere, to be somewhere at some time, be there. What system of white supremacy was he influenced by? And our father, again, grew up in the Congo. I'd like to point that out. The interviewer. You argue that the sort of support given, for example, to English language learners should be available to some black students too. Can you tell me more about that? Unbeknownst to many, there are many black children, not all, but many, and this is a debate in linguistics right now, who speak different dialects at home, like Patois, Creole, or African American vernacular English. In linguistics, this is summarized as Black English, and it is actually happening, I believe, there's a mandate, it's like a mandate not to mandate teaching proper English to students who happen to have issues in their home with English in, I believe, the Baltimore school system. The Baltimore school system in Maryland isn't properly teaching and is actually saying that if students don't know how to read or write, if that is attributed to them being in a household, and if they happen to be black, a darker Hispanic, what have you, don't teach them any better. And do not get them into a program to help with this, which I think it's abuse. I almost just swore just then because that really upsets me, but it's just abuse. Children in this country, if they are struggling with English because their own family doesn't know proper English, they need proper support. And that is something, I believe that's even within the reauthorization of Title IX that should be allowed, but this is something I do actually really support that we should do better in this state. Which are very different from standard English. They are extremely different. And if they have had the same language support as other English language learners, it would help them to better understand standard English, which would enable them to do better not only in English class, but also in math and science and other courses. So the very first step would to be, as a community, would be to give them that. And then she talks about when she was a child, she had some friends of hers who happened to be black, who did not speak standard English, who had a very, very hard time, and at that time, they used to offer speech classes in order to help them. They stopped. Today, you would never know that they had a problem. I'm not saying that to speak a dialect is bad. I know people who speak dialects and it's perfectly fine. It's not. But this is the reality. And then it's just the end is just talking about why are you not afraid versus everybody else, and she talks about it and just like, well, because I'm self-employed. So I'm going to try and keep this video short. That's why I'm cutting back real quick. But that is it. Please read the whole thing by yourself because I did skim through that last section because I did have some commentary. Please watch all the videos under this topic, and please like and share if this video was interesting. And hopefully this wraps up what's happening in school districts so that you understand what the language is and what the conversations that are happening in schools that are causing this. And you can identify that everything I've been saying has been right so far, has been very on point, that I led you through to this understanding and this conclusion. In the next video on this subject, we are going to talk about where this all comes from in the academics that it comes from and where people are teaching this and some of the most popular books that are causing this problem. So thank you, like and share, and have a good rest of your day. And have a nice bath after some of these topics because it can get pretty gross. Have a nice warm shower. Alright. Thank you. Have a good day.